Good. All right. Welcome to the Swamp. We are the Swamp Cast, and today your boy Tommy, that's me, will be hosting. We're joined by Annie and Christian. Say hi, boys.
What up?
Hello.
Hello, hello. And today we're a very lighthearted topic, very chill, very laid back, diving into the Chris Benoit double murder suicide, as well as CTE and premature wrestlers' deaths overall. You know, a bit dark, I know, but we'll have fun still. We'll have a laugh. We'll keep it light, and we'll get through this together. So there you go. Right? How was your guys' last little bit of time through the quarantine and stuff?
Not too bad. I mean, this documentary really upped my spirits.
Of course.
Things aren't so bad after all.
And you just watched this right before as well, right?
Worse.
I just finished it, yeah.
It's okay.
Could always be
I've been living
worse.
through this dread for 13 years, so it's it's been spread out equally over the past 13 years. Me and Ann just got playing done Yahtzee on the Switch. You know that 50-pack party game that we played? Like we did the darts game, we did Ludo. So it's called Yacht Dice. I think Yahtzee is like the Kleenex brand of Yacht Dice, you know, where everyone calls it that. But no, it's fun. Yeah. It's like, I don't know if you guys have played Yahtzee, but it's a good time.
Nope, but I've heard of it.
All right.
I didn't realize that was the brand name. I thought that was
Me too. And then I saw Yacht Dice, and I'm like, is that like the no name? Is there really only Yahtzee?
Right. It's like the Frisbee thing, right?
Frisbee is a brand. I didn't know that that was.
Yeah. It's a disc.
I feel like that could be a whole episode of brand names, which ones are which, and then you do like a guess. Maybe not a whole episode,
fun.
Yeah. Well, it could
like
be
a
a mini
show.
show, yeah. Like we'll have a host who has all
show.
the answers, and everyone else has like a little button that you have to hit in. Brr. That's the name of the. I mean, it's 50-50 chance, so I don't know how hard it's yes or no.
So
really.
it's a
Jeopardy special.
Something bad has to happen then if you get it wrong, like you get like slapped in the face or something. I don't know.
Virtually.
Virtually slapped.
Get our girlfriends to slap us in the face. You got it wrong.
Oh God.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Your whole just like you just lose.
Yeah, I don't want to give them that.
All
power.
your internet history is shared to the world if you get it wrong.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just silence on my part.
All right. Not incognito, just your regular internet history. It's fine.
Yeah, just
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
If you're not deleting it, like y'all should, that's on you. That's on you. Like, come on. Well, that's a whole different topic. All right. So, kind of the structure, kind of what I'm thinking today. I'll kind of dive into, like, obviously me, if you don't know, was a pro wrestler myself. I could call myself that for like 3 months and I wouldn't be like exaggerating all that much, I would say. Like I was like I wasn't good, but I pro wrestled for 3 months. I trained for like a year and a half, and then I was having matches for like 3 months while training. So I got to the point where I could call myself a pro wrestler, just barely, and then I stopped. Pretty much. So So I guess going into the background of Chris Benoit, and we're covering the Dark Side of the Ring season 2 episode 1, part 1 and part 2, divided into 2 parts. It's on Crave in Canada. You can check it out there, and I believe HBO Max, if I'm not mistaken, for the States. But I think it's actually released online. I think I actually watched the first one on Daily Motion. I think it was uploaded there the night of. It wasn't taken down, so you can check it out on Daily Motion or Crave. Details the Chris Benoit double murder suicide over the weekend of June 23rd to June 25th of 2007. So Chris Benoit. Oh, you have a question?
Admit something. Sorry, not a question. I thought we were watching the first episode of season 1. And then we were going to attempt to go into season 2. So I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about because the one that I watched had to do. And I'm
What
like,
was that one?
that was
Wow.
the one on Macho Man.
Oh, Macho Man. Oh, that one's depressing as well. They're all very depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's called the Dark Side of the Ring, so
Yeah, it's true.
it's in the name.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
So
you
don't
can
worry,
watch it
audience.
afterwards.
I will be your surrogate in this episode.
Exactly. So he's the total. Yeah, he's a total
Can't
surrogate.
believe I
of this
watched the
whole
wrong
thing.
episode.
There you go.
It's like doing the wrong homework.
Yep.
It's like you still did the work, but it's the wrong one.
Wrong
I'll
chapter.
I'll think
bro.
about covering the Macho Man one eventually. I don't know if I've even seen that one. I probably have. I must have. I don't know. So Chris Benoit, will probably go down, as one of the best pro wrestlers of all time, like skill wise of the art of being a pro wrestler. Chris Benoit was, top tier. Was never really strong with the character stuff or on the microphone, but actually in ring when it came to the actual quality of his matches, really unparalleled, to be honest. He broke into the business in 1985 with Stampede Wrestling in Calgary. Now, this was run by Stu Hart of the Hart family, Owen Hart, Bret Hart, those guys there. He became known around the world thanks to his classic matches in Japan, wrestling likes of Jushin Thunder Liger, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho as well. Now, all of this led him to signing with WCW in 1995, where he would win multiple championships, including the World Championship on his final day in the company. So he won it and then quit, and then went to WWE. And they actually
Wow.
didn't count his reign technically, even in the record books. But WCW was such a shit show in the year 1999 or 2099 that he was like, even though you're giving me the belt, I'm leaving still. This place sucks. And he left with Eddie Guerrero
Damn.
and Perry Saturn. They made the jump to WWE, in 2000, where he would spend the remainder of his career. Clear highlight for him was winning the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 20 in the main event. The show actually ended with both Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit embracing in the middle of the ring, both as world champions, to end wrestling's biggest show of the year in 2004. So yeah. Myself, I began watching wrestling in the year 2002, and being a 9-year-old Canadian boy, always had a soft spot for the Canadian wrestlers, Edge, Jericho, Benoit being some of my favorites. I remember the day that I found out about the Benoit tragedy. June 25th, 2007, I just got home from shopping at Zellers, which any Canadian kid from the 2000s remembers. Wait, Christian Wood and Annie, do you know Zellers? Nice.
Yep.
Not Canadian.
Basically Target, but Canadian.
It's like
yeah,
the-
but,
yeah, it's
but
Target.
Canadian Target. It shut down. Target bought Zellers, then Target shut down. It's a long story. And so got back from Zellers, checked WrestleZone.com, which I still check daily to this day. WrestleZone.com. Sponsored. They're not sponsored. And I read that Chris Benoit and his family were found dead in their Georgia home. It was a Sunday that I found out. Or was it a Monday? Was it a Monday? Sunday or Monday. I remember calling my friend Darren at the time. He was my only wrestling friend because wrestling wasn't cool at the time. And even if you liked wrestling, you didn't tell anyone you liked wrestling because, it's not cool. So they're probably closeted wrestling fans at school, but, me and him were the only ones that were I don't even think we were even open about being wrestling fans. It was being a teenager strange. But yeah, so this guy idolized Chris Benoit. I was a big fan of his, but this was his hero, his icon, man. So he was devastated for sure. And then when the reality of what actually unfolded, the actual, the murder, I feel like it actually really hurt him and damaged him as a person. He was never really the same. I guess he was a weird dude. We're not friends anymore, but I feel like definitely the Benoit tragedy affected him a bit for sure. Yeah. And the whole tragedy as a whole was a dark cloud over the WWE for at least the rest of the year. My interest wasn't really affected personally. I would probably attribute that to being so young and at the peak of my fandom that I was just like, yep, I'm gonna still watch wrestling because I like wrestling. And even though it was awful and a lot of people stopped watching wrestling at the time, I didn't. So diving into part one of the documentary, Chris Benoit's friendship with Eddie Guerrero kind of runs through the entire thing. They were best friends wrestling. Actually, they hated each other off the bat, right? If you in the documentary,
Yeah.
they're both so
Yeah, that was
hot-headed and
hilarious.
passionate that the first time they met each other, they actually didn't like each other at all. And then
They hated each other's guts.
yeah, which is like how like which is not unique to the wrestling industry and friendships for sure. They had some classic matches in Japan, Mexico as well. They're both in WCW at the same time, made the jump same day to WWE. So they've known
I
each
got a
other their
question.
entire careers almost.
What
Yep.
what's classic wrestling compared to this wrestling? Is it just like there's no show to it? It's just like purely about the sport, or
So
There's still showmanship, right?
so they wrestle in Japan. Japan, there's no real showmanship. There's no real there's no real
like
characters.
and
So they wrestled
personalities.
as Pegasus Kid and oh gosh, this is embarrassing. Black Tiger. Oh, this is embarrassing.
Yeah,
Black
that was
Tiger, right? Yeah. So Jericho. So their characters were really kind of based on personalities, not so much personalities of animals, but really the characters.
Yeah, because Jericho was Lionheart, right? So he kind of
Yeah. So Jericho
took their
really, yeah.
was inspired by that.
For sure. So their characters were they were pretty one dimensional because again the wrestling in Japan, neither of them spoke Japanese, right? So they can't really communicate with the fans verbally. So they have to communicate via their matches, and all that as well. But
Right.
At the time in the early 90s, mid 90s, it was revolutionary matches and stuff that would really pave the way for the modern style of wrestling, and what really got people people that are excuse me, under 6 feet tall and 200 pounds and less to really kind of go and become wrestlers because they weren't represented in the actual wrestling industry at the time. So that's kind of what really made them unique, made them kind of stand out, and they got great pride on that as well. As their careers developed, a lot of the young generation would probably tell them how they motivated them to become wrestlers, right? So, and that's kind of what runs through the entire story up to the Eddie Guerrero's death, right? And that's another episode of Dark Side of the Ring that we can chat about sometime as well. But you see how he was affected at the tribute show they did to Eddie, where he's bawling his eyes out. He's the one that's the most affected visually out of anyone there. Jericho mentions at the funeral where Benoit gives him a hug and he feels like the tears are soaking through his jacket to his shirt.
Yeah.
And as well, after Eddie died, he went on a Mexican tour like that week and kept wrestling as well.
Right.
Benoit,
I just went back to work.
Benoit would never take time off, right? So he never had the chance to properly grieve after the death.
Yeah, no closure, no nothing.
No, like eventually Nancy would buy him a journal, right, for him to write down his feelings. But yeah, as you saw in the his wife, Nancy, his wife, and in their show, as you would see that he would be found like at Eddie's house because I think Sandra, Nancy's sister, was staying at Eddie's house or something along those lines. But for some reason, Benoit was at Eddie's house and he'd be on the bench press and he'd be crying.
Yeah, it's because Nancy would be at her house because that was after Eddie Guerrero's death.
For Vicky.
So she was helping. Yeah, so she was helping his wife, widowed wife at the time. So he would just kind of drop by, and obviously like you're around Eddie Guerrero's stuff, and so that would clearly like cause him to, have a reaction.
Yeah. So it seems like even with the journal, he never recovered from that whole situation, right? And then going into
Well, it seemed like the journal definitely helped, right?
I think it.
Like in the sense of like getting his thoughts out,
like some form of an
'cause
out.
he was like becoming more and more distant.
Yeah, like a form of a.
Well, at least that's what people thought that it was helping, because he seemed to be getting more and more distant, and that's kind of when they proposed the journal idea, and then they were like, well, maybe that's helping because he seems to be writing down a lot in that, and then he seemed to be opening up a bit more, but clearly there was way more going on than just that.
Yeah, Again, I think it's a thing that it did help, but to what degree? And I think we know how much it didn't really in the long run. But again, there's so many factors that go into it. Maybe if Eddie didn't pass away, who knows if anything would have been different as well, right? Yeah. So another interesting point as well that they go into, which was never really covered, was Nancy Benoit, right? She's kind of just known as being, Chris Benoit's deceased wife, but she had a great career herself. Was a prominent manager in WCW for many years. What is very interesting is his wife her husband at the time. There you go. Kevin Sullivan was the booker and promoter of WCW at the time, and was in a feud with Chris Benoit. Right? Storyline wise, Kevin Sullivan or Chris Benoit took Nancy Benoit, Kevin Sullivan's wife, and they started dating. Right? So storyline wise, Nancy and Chris are dating.
Yeah, it was fictional.
It was fictional, but then Kevin actually thought it would be a good idea. You're out in public, right? We got to keep the, as they call it, kayfabe alive, right? So Nancy and Chris would actually be hanging out in public, and they actually developed a relationship from that. So Kevin Sullivan basically booked his own divorce.
Signed his own divorce.
Signed his own divorce papers, right?
Yeah. Wow. That's funny.
Yeah,
that's the opposite of was it Macho Man and Liz, right? Like, they met before, and he ended up bringing her into the wrestling world as like his
exactly. And Kevin really brought Nancy as well. I think it was someone else that picked her out of the crowd, but Kevin really kind of brought Nancy, forefront and everything, right?
Yeah.
So as well, what kind of part one kind of goes into, David talking about his relationship with Daniel as well, his brother, wanting to win the tag championships. They showed photos of them, at WrestleMania, at their house, doing wrestling moves to each other, at WrestleMania 20, where their dad won the championship. Right? That was definitely somber for sure.
And that was after Eddie Guerrero, because he left wrestling for a while, right?
It was short
to get clean. And...
Yeah, so he when Eddie left in 2001. He was gone for probably under a year, I think.
Oh, that's it. Okay,
yeah.
Wow, I thought it was more.
It wasn't that long. And then maybe it was about a year, and then he wrestled on the independents a bit, but he was such a talented performer. They were like, okay, go get clean,
get him back as soon as possible.
Exactly,
yeah.
And it was more that him wrestling wasn't good for his health at the time, right? So getting him away is what's best for him and his family at the time. Which is also so sad because when Eddie passed away, it was
he was clean.
He was clean. Yeah, it's said heart disease, and it's the guy was probably abusing steroids like Benoit was for over a couple decades, right? And drugs before then as well, right? So that kind of seems like that's what were the primary causes, but
and when they kind of mentioned that he would fall asleep mid-conversation without even realizing it. So that's definitely I don't know. That seems like symptoms of possible concussions and the CTE thing.
Oh, for sure.
Maybe.
Yeah, and what happened with Eddie, it was kind of before the CTE really kind of came to the forefront, right?
Yeah, into the spotlight. Yeah,
because Chris Nowitzki, who we'll go into a bit, didn't start his foundation until I think it was after Eddie's death. So I don't think Eddie's brain got really the proper kind of diagnosis, the treatment that it needed, right? So now we're kind of going the day of the murder. So here we go, fun times. So the day before the bodies were found, Chris Benoit informs Chavo Guerrero, Eddie's nephew, that he would be missing that day's show because Daniel and Nancy had food poisoning. But they agreed that Chavo would pick him up at the airport the next morning as they had a pay-per-view that night, where Chris was wrestling at for the ECW championship. Chavo gets some confusing text messages from Chris in the middle of the night and doesn't hear from him in the morning. So it's the day of the show. Chavo talks with the talent relations, John Laurinaitis, informing him of what happens. A wellness check is done at the Benoit home, and that's where the bodies are found. Now, what is very interesting is that, so the night of the 3-hour Benoit Showcase tribute show, was actually supposed to be a funeral for Vince McMahon storyline-wise, because he died in a limo accident, or the limo blew up the week before on TV, and storyline-wise he was dead. Now it was going to come out in storyline that it was. No, so
like
it wasn't real,
like
and also in storyline as well, it would have come out afterwards that it didn't really happen, and it was a hoax in storyline as well. But when Vince is at the top of the ring curtain and telling everyone about what happened, about the Chris Benoit, but Chris Benoit's family's dead. They're all dressed in black because they were all going to be part of the funeral segment on the show.
Jeez.
So they're all dressed for funeral attire. I don't think it got mentioned in the show, but it's one of the weirdest things. Yeah, exactly. So that's why in the interviews they're all wearing black. It's not because they just had the shirts; it's because they were all dressed for the Vince McMahon funeral. It's super
That's
weird.
Insane. Do you think someone was like after that? It's like, we're never doing this kind of stunt again because this is just insane. Like, I feel like
super weird. So maybe not that year, but like, dude, like the next. Hey, I got a great storyline. Let's get some ratings. It's yeah. And I don't. And they weren't really, didn't get bad PR from that. They got bad PR from a million things after the show.
From everything else. Yeah.
And when it comes to the WWE, their moral compass is. There really isn't one. It's limited. So it's a PR compass that they have, right? So if there's no bad PR, let's keep going.
Keep it going.
Let's go with it.
Let's keep her going. So yeah, and that's we can do a whole another topic on that. Many parts on that. But so that night on Raw, they dedicated the entire 3-hour broadcast to Chris Benoit, showcasing his greatest matches and interviews from the other wrestlers. Now, it was later that night after the show that the unfortunate truth was found out about that Chris Benoit was part of the double murder-suicide. And kind of here I'll be detailing the events that took place. On Friday night, Chris had a barbecue with his family. Later that night, he and Nancy had a fight. Chris tied Nancy to a chair, and eventually Benoit pressed his knee into her back while pulling the cord around her neck, strangling her to death. The next night, Chris gave Daniel a Xanax, and Chris suffocated Daniel in his bedroom.
How old was Sunday night? 7, right?
Daniel was 7, I believe, 7 or 8.
Okay.
On Sunday night, so now, mind you, it's Sunday. Both
what?
Nancy and Daniel are dead. Chris is, at this point, still alive. Googles the best way to strangle oneself, as well as some Bible verses as well. Chris Benoit ties the lat pull-down cord to his neck, strangling himself to death. Bibles were left at the bodies of Nancy and Daniel, and a suicide note was found at Chris's body, where he says that he'll be leaving this earth. And
it was in Chris's Bible, wasn't it?
I believe so. Yeah, so there were 3 Bibles, and the suicide note would have been either in or around.
Yeah.
The Bible. So. Yeah.
Whoa.
They.
Why?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found that part kind of interesting and horrifying at the same time. One, because the interesting part was because in the first episode they mentioned specifically that Eddie gave Chris a Bible, and kind of like, I don't know, he seemed very easily influenced by Eddie, because like he didn't really open up to a lot of other people, and Eddie was like one of the few people that he actually opened up to, and through, I guess, multiple conversations, eventually like Eddie gave him a Bible, and he kept that with him like quite closely and tightly. So I don't know. I found that interesting only because like they chose to. Well, I didn't get to like the murder part of it yet, so I just found that interesting as to why they decided to mention that, and then it made way more sense when they actually got to it, where he placed a Bible next to each one of them, and then even looked up a Bible verse about like a dead child coming back to life or something along the lines of that before looking up how to kill yourself the fastest way. Yeah, it just that just kind of threw me for a ringer. No pun intended.
Well, because Chris wasn't religious before meeting
Exactly.
Eddie, right? And Eddie was Vicky, Eddie's wife, said that for Eddie it was God, then it was wrestling in his family, a close second to God for Eddie, right? So, and again, that kind of ties it to where I think Eddie's death, to say it wasn't a primary motivator for Chris, with a variety of other factors, whether it's stress, the steroids, the CTE, which we'll go into now, right? Mm-hmm. It's So
I'm sorry.
So
I'm just
they go
so
into detail.
curious.
Sorry, Christian.
Sorry, I'm just so curious about like why that particular method, because it seems so brutal. Like it's not fast. It's really scary.
It's the testosterone that was in his body. There was like an absurd amount of testosterone in his body, so he's probably like, and he was drinking. Yeah, so
he was
it's
drunk.
Probably like a combination of being drunk, having a lot of testosterone equals to a lot of rage, and his mental like state was clearly not there after Eddie Guerrero's passing. So like he's depressed, he's angry, he's unstable and drunk.
But like he like by all other measurements, like he loved his these two.
He's a family man, right?
Yeah, that's
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm literally just trying to Googled like what does murder by strangulation mean, which is going to be the worst Google.
That's where you should delete your history. I think at that point.
That's your history.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
Go incognito on that one.
That out of context is very bad. But I'm just so curious as to like did he actually because that's sorry. All right, it's total sidetrack. It was just more
wire that he used. Well, at least on Nancy, right? It was like a telephone wire or something.
That's just so brutal. You know what I mean?
It's hard because what state was he in at the point, right? Obviously, this was very well planned out in advance. Obviously he had the Xanax, right? But they probably had that in the house maybe already, right? But you think a handgun or something would be...
He planted a knife, though. He planted a knife under his kid's bed. That was confusing.
Weird, right?
Yeah.
I don't get that. That was some religious... You got to maybe think
I'm assuming, yeah.
Yeah, or something. I don't know. Yeah, but it's like how much of this was... But again, I feel like we're trying to... give not excuses, but decipher the brain of Chris Benoit during this weekend, where I think so many people have, and I think rational thoughts and rational
just doesn't exist.
Decisions just don't really exist in this, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Sorry, I was just really curious. Like it just seems so brutal, and it threw me into a little bit of a tailspin as to why. Maybe in his mind, he's like,
maybe he thought I deserved to die a brutal death. I'm sure he has to feel some sort of sorrow for what happened, right? There's some sort of
thoughts there.
Yeah.
And also, as well, like he's still, in regards to his cognition, he's still out there wrestling on a daily basis as well. This is still the prime of his career. Right? So he still has he still has a strong amount of cognitive ability to be able to put on high quality wrestling matches and all that stuff as well. So with that part of his brain working, there still has to be some sort of somber effects that he's feeling after his family dies. You think, but who knows? Right?
Yeah, because he was alive for a full 24 hours before. He was alive for a full 24 hours with his dead family in the house.
At least his wife, yeah. It was at least, I think it was the evening, it was the morning of or day of that he
but
committed suicide after the day before being, but I don't know the exact hours, but
wow. All right, sorry for derailing.
So No, it's a good discussion point for sure, man. So they next part they go into detail with Chris Nowitzki. So Chris Nowitzki is a cool guy. So he was a Harvard graduate, and when I first started watching wrestling, he was around. He was a new guy. He was a Harvard graduate, and his character was being that douchey Harvard stuck-up snob kind of guy, right? Nice. Yeah, because no matter what he wanted to do in the WWE, they're going to be like, you graduate from Harvard, you're a Harvard, that's your whole gimmick. Your whole self is being from Harvard. That's all you are. So he was only around for about a year. Due to concussions, he retired in 2003, I believe. and he went to go get his PhD, and then he founded the Concussion Legacy Foundation, CLF, and this was founded to solve the concussion crisis in sports, the military, all through medical research, treatment, education, and prevention. And Benoit and Chris Nowitzki actually had a conversation. I didn't get the exact year. I think it was.
It was about 6 months before the incident.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah,
it was about around that. Yeah. So Nowitzki talked to Chris and said, "Yeah, I had 6 concussions. That led me to retiring as a wrestler and starting this foundation. How many do you have? Do you think?" And he couldn't recall. He had way more than 6, and he had no idea what the number was. And at that time, Benoit gave Chris his number and told him to call him. And he called him the next week. Nowitzki did, or shortly afterwards. And at the time, it sounded like Benoit and Nancy were arguing. And Benoit said he was going to call him back, never did. And then obviously the events unfolded, I believe, quite some time afterwards. But Nowitzki actually ended up calling Chris Benoit's father, and they agreed to donate his brain to the Foundation for Research. The brain was studied by the organization and had damage in areas that would be related to emotional behaviors and would definitely have a big impact on his personality day to day.
That's exactly like there's a documentary on kind of I guess the version of Dark Side of the Ring where it's about the Last Enforcer or something like that. And it's the same thing. He was kind of I forgot his name because I'm an idiot. But this guy would get into lots of fights and stuff like that, and then he ended up talking to his doctor, and his doctor was like, "Oh, you suffered a pretty big concussion. How often do you did you blacked out? How often does this happen? Once every few months kind of thing, because that's really dangerous." And apparently the enforcer laughed. It's I get one at least every game, kind of thing.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And they did the same thing where they studied his brain after, and I think they discovered that the parts of the brain, because of all the concussions, were dying, and that was again related to a emotional behavior, and the family actually noted that after one big concussion, he almost seemed to change and started getting more and more depressed as time went on because of constant fights and stuff like that. And sorry, that's just to add how other sports clearly have started going down that, but I think
and that makes so much sense because if you said that the brain was literally kind of dying, and it affects your emotional state, then if you are depressed, your brain literally has no way of healing itself, so you would never get better.
It's I don't know, just insane how
Wild.
This is. Yeah, no, it's wild. And the only way you can test it for this kind of degradation is you have to dissect the brain. So you can't
so after the fact.
After the fact, exactly. So you can't tell oh, this guy's got to stop doing this because parts of his brain cells are dying.
Yeah.
You'll have to just be well, we'll have to wait and see, and it's
donating to science afterwards. Yeah,
for sure.
It's, yeah, especially in hockey, right? It's pure. It's just there's no gloves. It's just fisticuffs, right? It's just
especially at that point.
So at this point in the documentary, they mention that wrestlers are 20 times more likely to die before the age of 45 than football players. And we'll again, I think that was actually a quote from a news, a news show at the time, but that was kind of definitely,
So is that statistic accurate?
I don't know if that's a true stat. I wouldn't be surprised, but I think it was on CNN or one of those Nancy Grace shows at the time, headlines. And also that was in 2007. A lot of things have changed since then as well, with making that number maybe even higher than 20.
Right.
To be honest, right? Well, as I say that as well, the wrestler it's improving a lot now as well, but yeah. So. The ending portion of the documentary details, how WWE left David Benoit and everyone affected by the tragedy pretty high and dry, right? Also, how David's mother told Nancy's sister, Sandra, that they wanted nothing to do with the Benoit family. this led to 12 years of no communication between David and Sandra. Now, to remind you, David is Chris Benoit's remaining son from a previous marriage, and Sandra was Nancy's sister. Now, 12 years no communication until Chris Jericho inviting them both to an AEW show. AEW, new wrestling promotion that rivals WWE, brought them backstage. They had a conversation where Jericho mentions how healthy it is for both of them to have each other and, be in each other's lives, because no one knows what they're feeling except for each other, right? All that, right? You can talk to a counselor, you can talk to,
it's like your aunt and
other wrestlers,
and her nephew, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're the only people that survived that are that close to the tragedy. Right, so it's sad that there were 12 years of no communication between them, but it's good that it's at least now it's kind of come to.
Yeah, it kind of ended on as beautiful as a note as it could end on, considering the event.
Yeah, and it ends. The last scene is Sandra saying that one day she hopes to be able to forgive Chris,
right,
Benoit, for everything that he's done, and that day that might be tomorrow, but it's not today, right? So it's a thing that. For her sake, how much, and again, as everything kind of comes out with CTE, how much was it actually Chris Benoit, the man that she knew, doing the actions, versus what he was that weekend, right?
Yeah.
And what she can kind of justify and how, but I think her eventually forgiving Chris is probably good for her, well-being, if that's what she wants to do, and if that's something that, right? But who knows? So that wraps up the 2-part series. I did want to go into David Benoit right now, because I think it's interesting stuff on him right now, and just CT overall in wrestling, right? So with David Benoit, 2 months before the documentary aired, it would have been January 2020. He sat down with Chris Van Vliet. He's a very well-respected interviewer in wrestling. And this was the first time anyone really ever heard from David Benoit at all. They heard of him. They knew he was trained to become a wrestler, right? But they never really heard from him. It was like an hour and a half sit down with David Benoit. And here he details he actually wants to become a wrestler, wants to use the Benoit name, wants to come out to Chris's old theme music, and wear his tights.
Jeebus.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. He still idolizes his father to this day, and it seems like he can separate that weekend's actions entirely from who his dad was as a person.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Even in the docuseries, he's like fully convinced that wasn't his dad. Like he's very much in that mindset.
I would argue that he's correct, especially since we know it does change the form of your brain by getting so many concussions. But I still think that it is like the profession that he wants to get into is literally the thing that transformed his dad, into what he became, Yeah. That's an interesting kind of.
To him, like his dad is like he says it all the time, where it's like he was his hero, and the only reason he was the hero that he was.
I'm not
was
disagreeing.
Because of their profession. I know. I'm just saying. I'm just like.
I'm just saying it's clearly a very gray kind of situation.
For sure.
Like,
in regards to him, David becoming an actual wrestler, things have changed quite a bit compared to about like 15 years ago, right? Chair shots to the head are now.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. Because
so
they mentioned that people just took chairs to the head like all the time, and like I remember watching that too. Like I remember watching WWE back in early 2000s, and people were like literally just taking chairs to the head. And when Jericho like kind of talks about it, and he's like, it's like a rite of passage almost, and he's just like, you just gotta like, clench up and just take it. And I'm like, wait, I thought that was part of the show.
No, it's a legit steel chair to the head.
That's
and ladders and whatever, right? It was
so that doesn't happen anymore.
No. So again, when you think of wrestling, especially being our age, you think of like the TLC matches with like Edge and Matt Hardy, the Dudley Boys, right? Chair shots to the head, right? Or the concerto where it was actually like the dude was lying down with the chair, his head on a chair and then another chair, smacking his head with the other chair in between,
Yeah.
which
Oh,
is actually so that one is actually safe because they don't actually hit the person's head. So it can be gimmicked, and that I think that'll still happen nowadays sometimes, only because you can do it safely if the person's smart.
Yeah.
You can do that one safely. But no, since the Benoit tragedy, I can probably count in the WWE the amount of chair shots to the head. Undertaker and Triple H did it at WrestleMania once, and they got fined. But it was like WrestleMania, and they're like, we're doing it anyways.
Right.
What would happen on a weekly basis now never happens anymore. They'll do like chair shots to the back and the gut and stuff.
Yeah, the back's definitely more of a thing now.
Yeah. So they'll hit him on the back. Other promotions, AEW, I feel like I think they've done a chair with Cody. Yeah, there was actually one that happened a couple years ago where it was this wrestler hits one of the other wrestlers in the back of the head, and he actually was bleeding hard way. Yeah, and he actually split his head open.
Oh god.
And and the fans were pretty pissed off about that. They were like, we don't need that nowadays.
Yeah.
But the guy that took the chair shot is one of the owners, so he's like, well, it's my company. If you're not going to tell me no, right? So
he's the one in charge of the insurance anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
What about ladders? So, do they still use ladders? Like,
oh yeah, so they still use all the weapons. It's just there's no.
It's just where it
chair
goes,
shots to the head. Yeah, so everything. Right. Yeah, but when I say that, they take concussions very seriously now in the WWE and in AEW. Like I'd say like probably more than other sports with everything, right?
Well,
like,
good. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. Daniel Bryan had to retire back in 2016 because of CTE, even though he was like he had his own doctors clearing him, but the WWE doctors wouldn't clear him. And he was like, I can wrestle. I have doctors saying I can. But they were like, nope, you're not passing our tests. You're not going. So he retired for like 2 years. And then and then eventually he was able to pass their test. Right? So they've improved dramatically in regards to that. Right? Now,
what about in terms of like the sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was also wondering about like the whole wellness check thing, that like Chris Benoit was getting wellness checks even though he was clearly still abusing steroids or testosterone. I know Chris Jericho talks about the fact that they've really kind of tightened their grip in terms of like using enhancing drugs, and so, or like performance enhancements, and so is that still, I don't know, like how tight of a thing is that now?
So since the Benoit tragedy, they've instituted, or privately, what they say, they've instituted a drug policy that would rival like your NFL's, right? In regards to, and that's what Jericho says, right? In regards to, in regard to testing, it only applies to contracted wrestlers, so full-time wrestlers, right? So Triple H, who wrestles a couple times a year, right, is not tested. Brock Lesnar, who wrestles,
so like the guest spots.
Yeah, but like Brock Lesnar, sometimes he's wrestling almost not all the time. He'll wrestle, 4 times a year, but he's wrestling in the biggest matches of the year. He's not tested. He actually, well, it probably didn't look good for them. He popped positive for a UFC drug test when he wrestled there in 2016, when he was like wrestling full time for not full time again, like once every couple months for them. Yeah. Right. And like and guys that have popped, they caught Roman Reigns for a drug test, positive result back 4 years ago.
He had cancer, so like how does that work? Didn't he? Like, I'm not.
So his cancer came back. Yeah, so he had cancer when he was younger, I believe, as a teenager or a kid, and then it came back. His leukemia came back in 2018. Right. So he popped positive. So he thought it was like gone forever, I think, and then it came back. Right. And now it's gone.
When he popped positive, was that drugs related to that? Like that he was probably taking medicine?
No, it was steroids. It was steroids.
It was steroids.
Yeah, it was steroids that he popped for back then.
I imagine he wouldn't be able to actually wouldn't have
Perform.
it would be dangerous for him to perform while on drugs to
Yeah.
like chemo and stuff like that. That would already be killing your body, right? Like,
Oh, like, yeah. So when he actually found out he had leukemia, he was the champion, relinquished the belt, and was off TV for like 6 months or 5 months, going through leukemia, and then came back. So when he had cancer, he was gone the entire time.
Damn, what a gangster.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny because at the time, like, they were trying to make Roman Reigns tangent here, like the next John Cena for like 3 years, and fans were like, "No, this is so boring. Like, we don't like anytime
care.
anytime they're like, cheer this guy. I want you to cheer this guy. They're like, no, we want to choose the guy ourselves. The fans do, right?
Yeah.
So when they're told to cheer the guy, they're like, no. So they booed him out of the building for like 2 years when he's like main eventing WrestleMania as the top good guy storyline wise. The fans are like shitting on it all, right?
Savage.
But they always but then it got to a point where, like with John Cena, they liked booing him a bit, so they
Right.
played into it and stuff. He was kind of more of a in between good guy bad guy. Like, he'd be a good guy against some wrestlers, a bad guy against some
Anti-hero.
wrestlers, anti-hero kind of, right? But once he was like he was on Raw, he did a big speech about, hey guys, I have leukemia, or I have cancer. I'm going through leukemia treatment. The fans all just like stood up and applauded and were crying. Like, everyone was. It was just like,
Wow.
It was like, okay, yeah. It was like,
Like
all
you
like
said,
I think they booed. I think they booed him to the ring. They were like, he was coming to the ring and
They
they were like,
applauded
screw
him
you,
all.
we hate you. And then everyone was crying. And then when he came
Now the
back,
tables
he was a
turned.
total good guy babyface. Like, like no one kind of people are like, okay, we're done booing Roman Reigns, which is funny now because now he's a bad guy. Now he's like, now he's actually a storyline bad guy right now.
Because
And
he's
he's
got
doing
the belt
like
right now, right?
Yeah, so now he's like
So,
the top guy,
Usos
got the
trying
belt.
to get it back, yeah.
Yeah, so and it's like some of the best wrestling work that they've done for like the dude's like it's great. It's great. It's like it's known that he was like meant to be a bad guy in storyline. He's doing so good at it. He was like, why did you try this for like 3 years to make him a good guy? Whatever. But yeah, but I wanted to yeah, it was weird because at the time when he revealed that he had cancer, some people online were thinking it was a storyline to turn him into a good
Right.
guy. And I'm like, dude, they're a publicly traded company. They're not gonna lie about a dude
Yeah.
having cancer. That does
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
look cool. Like they
Nope.
work like they're partnered with like the Susie G. Coleman Foundation for breast cancer. They're not gonna lie about that shit. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I knew some people that were like that believed it. And I'm like, dude, that's stupid. Like, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
Would backfire so damn hard.
So
like,
hard.
yeah.
Worse than the Chris
exactly.
Benoit
Like-
thing.
Yeah, like for their PR, like like
That's a
that's
nightmare.
as bad as it gets, right? Yeah. Ann just texted me saying how Susan G. Coleman is hella sus for breast, and it is kind of sus. It is. They got some issues behind them as well, but yeah.
For
But
another
regardless,
podcast.
bad PR. Yeah. So going to kind of CTE, and kind of early wrestler death. The list of wrestlers that have passed away prematurely since the 1980s is a list so big we can't even cover it now, and you have to.
Wow.
That's like a whole two-parter in regards to wrestlers' early death.
Damn.
If you take the WrestleMania 6 card in 1990 in Toronto, 38 wrestlers wrestle on the card, 14 are dead.
Wow.
That's 40% of the wrestlers
Yep.
that wrestled on the card there are dead, right? People on that list are like, Ultimate Warrior, who dude was a maniac, and that's a whole other story. The only one that I think really died of, which you could argue is of natural causes, is probably Andre the Giant, because he was so massive and just like wasn't meant
Yeah.
to live a long life. He was like 7 feet tall
Like
and
a-
like 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like it was like a heart issue, right? Or am I mistaken?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, but
But he had
regardless
a
of him,
bunch
it's
of
like okay.
issues too.
Yeah. Like he would have passed away at that age, likely, regardless.
Oh
of
yeah, and
wrestling,
he was
right?
he also was drinking a lot, and yeah. I
Dude,
remember reading about it.
his stories of just how much he could drink, like he's like the big, like, a huge legendary drinker, like of what he could drink.
Well, because like the beers look tiny in his hand, so he'd be just pounding back, right? Like,
Yeah, like he would have like
God.
dozens of like balls of wine a night, and I'm like, I think I am like cool. Like, yeah, I drank a whole 6-pack of Michelob Ultra. Look at me go. Yeah, I'm so cool. Yeah, so that's a staggering number on like early wrestlers' death, like in general, is that. But kind of going into CTE, in July 2016, 53 wrestlers filed a lawsuit against the WWE, looking to hold them accountable for long-term neurological injuries due to multiple concussions and CTE overall. So there were 53 wrestlers on that the lawsuit. 7 wrestlers as part of this case have died due to CTE-related symptoms. This includes Andrew Test Martin, who had a fairly successful career in the WWE in the mid-2000s. Axel Rotten and Balls Mahoney, who made their name in ECW. A lot of chair shots to the head with those guys as well. Ashley Massaro, who won the 2005 WWE Diva Search, and was a pretty popular character on their programming that decade, but never didn't wrestle a lot as well. But again, that's a good example of she was only with them for a few years and wrestled in their women's matches were like 3 minutes long and were bra and panties matches half the time as well. So if a casual wrestler like that can develop CTE,
right?
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot. That's why
That's-
concussion should
no.
be taken super seriously.
Yeah. And again, things seem to be improving kind of with how they operate in regards to their concussion protocol and testing. And it seems like wrestlers' deaths are, less prominent now. I remember back in like the late 2000s, it would be like, oh, Roddy Piper's
There's
dead.
another one?
He died afterwards. Macho Man's dead. Well, it was like every 2 months, like your like childhood
Just
heroes
dropping.
are dropping, right? Like all the popular wrestlers, other than like Hulk Hogan, like your
Right.
Macho Man, Roddy Piper, Ultimate Warrior, they're all dead before 60, right? So it's like you hope for
nuts.
for your Randy Orton's, John Cena's, Triple H's,
Right, to
Edge's, all
make
those
it.
guys, right? That it's not going to be a problem, right? Because they're also with them. I think that a lot of them are more well off financially than those guys. You'd hope with their investments and their social medias, their other avenues to make money.
other
They don't
ventures,
have to
yeah.
wrestle for because. Dude, like wrestlers in the 80s, they'd wrestle for WWE for like, 2-3 years, make a good name for themselves, get let go, then have to wrestle on the indies for like,
and they're
decades
still
and
like
decades,
paycheck to
right?
paycheck
And
almost.
exactly, right? The movie The Wrestler kind of goes into that as well, if you guys have seen that with Mickey Rourke. That's a great movie, kind of. Yeah,
I need to watch that
kinda
again. I
going-
think I watched it when I was too young, so I didn't fully appreciate it. I should check it out again.
Yeah. But then it kind of goes to nowadays, right? Where, I was a pro wrestler, and if I continued wrestling, wouldn't be surprised if I developed some,
Yeah. So I was gonna ask you that.
right?
Like obviously, like I know you did wrestle for a few months, right? Like I'm assuming
year
that
of
there were
training
no
and
concussions
3.
involved, or
No, I was pretty lucky. I'm thinking of our training class who had concussions. Someone probably got a concussion. Oh yeah, one of the. Yeah, I
Probably
feel like
best known
concussions
names.
have happened, but sometimes you don't know if you had a concussion. I was
Right.
lucky. Like my training, like I train a couple times a week, 2-3 times a week when I my busiest. So some people that are training are doing it 5 days a week as well. So my training wasn't as intense as maybe if I was in the WWE, for example, right, doing a full I was a full like student to theirs or whatever, right? But
Yeah.
and when I wrestled as well, I wrestled probably 20 matches, 20,
Okay.
25 like matches on shows. With the one weekend I wrestled 12 matches. That's the bulk of it. Yeah.
did
So
you have
I was
any
lucky.
sort of injuries?
I had a shoulder. I took a body slam the wrong way. Was it a body slam? How did I hurt my shoulder? I think it was a body slam. I landed on my shoulder the wrong way.
Okay.
Yeah. So I landed on my shoulder the wrong way. So I developed. I was at the gym. I don't think I stretched afterwards, and then during practice, I took a body slam the wrong way and just fell. And also, I think I fell on my shoulder a bit as well, and then I couldn't lift my arm up for the rest of the day or the next couple days.
Damn.
And then eventually, maybe the next day I could, but I think I did because I didn't go to the doctor. But so I could eventually lift my arm up and stuff, and I still wrestled as well through that. And then it took a couple years after that to really kind of get my shoulder kind of normal. Because after that, I would kind of overcompensate and then land more on my other shoulder to avoid that. So that shoulder got fucked up a bit, right?
Yeah.
So I was lucky. Like that. Like again, I didn't. To call myself a pro wrestler is kind of, it's. I wrestled for a few months, so I didn't get.
Right.
Yeah. So but definitely people that are on the indies wrestling, a couple times a month for a few years, they're definitely going to have concussions. It's just natural. And especially on the independent, and when it comes to wrestling, let's say whether it's, I wrestled a match in Kelowna where people are doing like chair shots to the head still there, right? Like I didn't do it. No one would ask me to, but they're still doing it in those shows, right? In front of 40 people. Jeez. People are still blading there as well, where you take a razor blade and cut in your forehead to make yourself bleed. Shit like that still happens. Maybe not. That was 5 years ago. Maybe that's a bit less now. You'd hope.
Right.
But
you never know.
But no, you never. And yeah. But again, that's the thing is that these companies don't have wellness policies. These small independent promotions, right? They got nothing. Right.
Yeah.
So, you'd
like
hope that chair shots.
Value.
Yeah. Right. And a lot of these people, their whole lives are this and their passions, and maybe if I have this hardcore match at this promotion and I do really good, I'll get noticed, so they kind of go a bit extra maybe as well, right? It's so the precautions that happen in the WWE and other promotions like AEW and other the
don't necessarily extend
popular promotions around the world.
The smaller ones.
They don't.
Yeah.
No. Like you'd hope that they wouldn't have a culture like that, anymore, but God, yeah, there's definitely that still going on. Like there's a promotion called CZW Wrestling, which is like it's like nail guns to the forehead, thumbtacks, like light bulb tubes they get thrown into and stuff. And
wait, you're joking? Please say you're joking.
No, dude, that's the
that's fucking insane.
Oh yeah, it's wrestling's a unique art form. Many different different avenues.
The right word.
It's really funny because wrestling gets that this is fake kind of like treatment a lot, and I think it's like it's not that it's like the damage being done is real, but it's performative. Like it can be kind of like stuntmen kind of thing. Like they're actually doing the thing. But there is a bit dramatic. Of like there's a script to it, so there is a little bit of a play. There's a little bit of cooperation between choreography, but it doesn't make the damage done any less real, and that's the part that I can see why when people say, "Oh, it's fake," they're referring to the fact that there is choreography to it and stuff like that, that it can be planned out. But I can see why some wrestlers could get mad because it's like, but the damage is real. That's not fake. So why are you calling it fake, right? So I can see where there can be friction in that because geez, like that is brutal.
Yeah, I certainly especially after watching these 2 episodes, and I feel like I should watch more because it's pretty fascinating. Yeah. But yeah, like I think I appreciated that aspect of it even more because I feel like I've used to watch WWE, so like I never necessarily like disregarded what they did. I thought it was performative, obviously, but like I think I didn't appreciate as much like the damage that was sustained by all of these people as much as I do now, and also like just after like I've talked to Thomas about that before too, and you've explained more of it as well to me, so it's like it's just more educational and like understanding more of like you said, the art form of it. And, people like, even the people who knew Chris Benoit, like talk about the fact that he was like probably one of the most dedicated people around. Like he just never like quit. He just kept going, right? He kept doing it. And that's all he wanted to do. And ironically, like that was the death of him. But I don't know.
And one of I forgot to mention this, but when I get episode 1 ends with Jericho saying, if you lined up 100 people in a row, and you had me pick who's the least likely to murder my family, he'd be the one that I would pick.
Right.
Or something along those lines, right? It's because it's because it was like all that Benoit cared about was wrestling in his family, right? So
Yeah. Where did he come? Where is he from? Edmonton? Is that?
Edmonton, yeah.
Okay.
Edmonton, born and raised, yeah. It's I feel bad for Edmonton. They don't got a lot of kind of worldwide heroes to right. He was like, I remember he won the championship at WrestleMania 20 in New York in 2004. The next show was in Edmonton.
Oh wow.
So it was in Edmonton, the next pay-per-view. So he came in there as champion. Like he's the biggest like celebrity, like he's the biggest deal, and it's like he was doing all this media tours, and he was like Wayne Gretzky came back to Edmonton.
Yeah.
Right? He was like he was the biggest hero, right? Yeah. And is if this didn't happen, he would definitely go down as him and Bret Hart is probably the greatest Canadian wrestlers of all time. Jericho is like American and Canadian and stuff.
Yeah. I didn't even realize Jericho was Canadian. I thought he was American.
He was born in New York, and then his dad was actually an NHL player. So his dad was he played for the Rangers, and then he they got traded or signed with Winnipeg, and then when Jericho was super young, moved to Winnipeg, and he grew up in Winnipeg.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It's funny. With Jericho, when they were promoting him as a babyface, as a good guy, they would make him from New York, so the Americans thought he was American. And when he was a bad guy, they would say Winnipeg to make them boo him.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Now he's just kind of from Winnipeg, and they stopped doing that. But I thought that was always funny. He's like, he's not from New York, and I'm like, oh, he is actually, and that's
yeah.
Like, they're not gonna cheer someone from Winnipeg.
He was probably like the most interesting guest in that entire in those 2 episodes. He was probably the most interesting guest because his approach to things were very grounded and rational. Like, they asked him to come for the Chris Benoit like memorial or like the tribute show, and he was just like, nope. It's like almost like he kind of like suspected that there would be more to it or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jericho, I think, will go, especially now. It's funny. He wrestled. The dude's a published author. He's written like 3 best-selling novels. He has a band that's like a pretty damn well popular like band in Fozzy. Like,
that's cool.
Sold a gazillion records. Dude, like he has a cruise ship every year. He does the Jericho Cruise.
Oh,
the
wow.
Rock and Wrestling Cruise. What else? I think he's actually releasing another book or a movie that's coming out next. The dude he has a podcast. The dude is like
he doesn't stop. That's awesome,
dude. Yeah, and he's like 50 right now.
Yeah. Well, shit.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah, guys. I guess anything kind of obviously Christian hasn't watched it yet. Although I guess we kind of give you a summary, but there's stuff we haven't covered. And I think it's still worth it. I think because what's cool, I think, Annie, you might agree with this, is when they would do the recap scenes, they would get other people to reenact it. I think you saw that with the Macho Man one. They probably did, right, Christian? Where they would have other people reenact certain scenes. Yeah,
that was
they actually used. I'm blanking on the person's name, but it's actually a very famous Canadian wrestler they used to play Chris Benoit actually in that. Which I thought was cool. It was quite immersive. They did a good job making you like you always knew that it wasn't, but it was a certain a certain weight to it when they would there was some budget behind those reenactments for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It was really well filmed because like it's like kind of blurred but you still see what's happening like silhouette style and it was pretty well done.
I think things like that have to be tastefully done because they are touching on like sore moments, right? And dealing with like the subject, like real people, right? Like it's not like it's not like a pure fictional character. It's like these people existed, so they're it seems to be handling it very well, from what I can tell with the episode that I saw, the wrong homework that I did.
Yeah.
But
it's
awesome.
at least relevant. It's at least relevant to the point. So there you go. You got one.
Yeah. Yes, I did it.
Points.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. To me, it kind of like this is a bit of a tangent, but these are the parallels that I kind of saw it as, not as dark, but similar in the sense of it kind of reminded me of in the music industry for like Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington. Like they were like really, really good friends, and then Chris Cornell committed suicide in like June or something, or maybe like, yeah, I think it was like June. And then Chester Bennington was like never the same again. And then like a month later, he did the same, and he had like a letter for like Chris Cornell and everything. So like clearly, like, you know, it's like that the moment in someone's life that really they don't really come back from, and it seemed like that was the same. As to, yeah,
definitely parallels between wrestlers and like rock stars, because you know you're on the road all the time, right? The people that are in your band or in your, you know, your colleagues in wrestling, the other wrestlers, they're your family. You see them every day, right? All the time.
Yeah.
You go to you work out with them. You go get food with them. You do everything with them. Your whole life is with them.
yeah.
Right?
For like 10 years is at least for Chris and Eddie. Like it seemed like they were together for like 10 years, and that's a long time.
Yeah, exactly, right. So yeah, there definitely parallels, and with rock and roll musicians and wrestlers, the early deaths in general. You could probably draw some huge parallels between
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
whole
you know,
industry,
it's
right?
like the same thing, right? Like the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and you get get caught up in that entire storm.
I guess also like the ability to grieve. It's like it must be hard being in the public light and kind of not being sure whether you're like, yeah, have to almost hide it away, and it's a very personal thing, grief, right? And it's like it must be hard to be able to go through that process with cameras and people wanting to know, even if it's with the best intention. Like sometimes you just like need some people that you can trust to kind of protect you and let you express it and actually get it out, because it's different for everyone, and kind of I don't know, and it takes as long as it needs to. Like some people it'll take years, like you never fully really come back from that like fully, but just to get okay, sometimes that can take years. And the fact that they got to keep going in order to stay relevant in something like in work and remain like you know, keep earning so they can like live and provide for their families, like must be like quite a toll that like they shouldn't have to take. Really, they should be able to worry about them.
Yeah, and people are critical of them.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because time off in wrestling has only been a thing like the past couple years. Like you would get time off, which sounds funny.
Like paid.
Like even not even like regardless.
Not
like,
even
time
paid.
Off.
No. Wow.
Yeah, like you would really only get time off if you got injured. Really. Like you could ask for time off, but it was kind of unwritten that you wouldn't. And also, you're gonna, you know, even if it was with the best intention they gave you time off, they were gonna give your spot would go to somebody else, or you would be concerned that it would, because there's only so many hours in a TV show, right? They need to fill it up with other people, right? So it's only been the past kind of couple of years where wrestlers have kind of felt a bit of independence and confidence in that matter. We're like, I'm a big enough star. I'll take some time off. I'll come back a bigger star. I'll come back fresher. You know, I'll be more relevant to the fans, less stale. You know.
Yeah.
I
mean, actually, that's a really smart idea. Like, I'm sorry, I'm extending this, but it's like, what is it like in comics? Like when you have like just jumping to a different medium altogether. But like when you have like when you have a story that closes with a character, sometimes you're happy to wait longer for the next good story to come instead of receiving lots of like meandering stories, and you kind of end up getting bored of that character. Yeah, like I think I ended up like I don't buy Green Lantern anymore because it just felt very like they couldn't really. It must have been really hard for them to one up. Was it Blackest Night and stuff like that, and the light and the War of Light and stuff like that. So after that, I kind of felt like, okay, guys, like you keep trying to do something bigger than that you don't have to do, but instead of pivoting to something else, personally, that's a personal thing, and I imagine that's probably with every medium. You know, if you have too much of a character, you're kind of like, all right, like I'm done.
You've exhausted it.
Yeah, you've exhausted like the audience's emotion on it, and it's actually smarter to let them take some time off, recover, and come back fresher and more relevant, because then that would be awesome for like the
Oh, for
audience
sure.
to go, oh yeah, this guy, I can't wait to see him.
Yeah,
You know, like this is
definitely.
amazing.
Yeah, and like with Roman Reigns, that's what like Roman Reigns, back when when COVID started, right? Roman Reigns is like, I have a family. I was a cancer survivor. I'm going home, right? I'm not coming back for this, right? Because they didn't miss a beat. WWE, they did the shows in their performance center, in their training school. And kept going full on, right? During all of COVID. And Roman Reigns was like, nope, going home. He was off TV and he had a match he was going to win the championship from Goldberg at WrestleMania. And he's like, I don't care. I'm good. I don't want it. And he came back at SummerSlam as the bad guy. And it's like, the dude's never been more relevant and more of a bigger star than right now. And he's so you can tell he's so artistically driven. He's so like he
feels genuine.
He's hitting on all cylinders right now because he's so refreshed.
It's funny.
He's not
I know most people probably watched Hobbs and Shaw for Hobbs and Shaw, which is like The Rock and Jason Statham. But I honestly kind of watched it for Roman Reigns because I was just I was just curious that he was in it. I'm like, wait, what's he doing here? And then I'm like, oh, that's dope.
Yeah.
Cool.
The dude's got and especially now he's doing these like, he had this 20-minute monologue on SmackDown that was like uninterrupted, and it was just like, dude's just like an amazing actor guy didn't go to school.
Charisma.
This dude's just like a straight up amazing actor. Like dude could go into Hollywood like tomorrow and be a better actor than like The Rock and John Cena, I think.
Yeah, he's got charisma.
Ridiculous, right?
He can really he's got like that ability to kind of grab your attention, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That's wicked. I like that.
Also, his tattoos are great too. I like that.
He does have cool tattoos, and he also came back with what's it called when you get those the not the fake teeth, but they make it look really white. Is it fake teeth? What's it called when he gets
dentures?
Like
no, not dentures.
You said fake teeth, dentures.
No, what's it
I'm
called?
not sure.
I'm gonna Google it. It's a thing that makes your teeth really white.
Like white.
Oh, the
whiteners?
strips. The strips.
The strips?
No.
Yeah.
No, they're not strips. They
Bleaching?
are.
This seems more
No.
like a procedure than.
Yeah, it's a procedure. I'm forgetting what
Isn't
it's
it just
called.
teeth whitening?
That's what I
No,
thought.
it's a whole. No, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, dentures. You replace them.
No. Okay, Roman Reigns' teeth.
Wow.
Here we go. Come on, give me something. Give me something.
It's giving you Roman Reigns' teeth, probably.
I gotta delete my browsing history after this. Roman Reigns' teeth. That's concerning. Okay. All right. Never mind. This is not good podcast material.
Maybe we'll like recap it next time.
I'll find out what they're
It's like
called.
previously on Swamp Life.
Dentures. That's what they're called.
They're not dentures.
I'm joking.
yes, but it's,
I can't
know.
remove that from my brain, but
okay. I'm mad I can't remember what they're called now. But I think Brian Griffin got them done on Family Guy that one time. Veneers!
Oh.
Veneers! They're veneers.
veneers.
Veneers. Yeah. Okay. Veneers.
And on that note,
Anyways, my point being is that he came back as a bad guy with veneers, and it's just like, of course, he's so douchey. The veneers, like, it fits so well.
Your teeth are too white for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess before we wrap her up, anything else about the docuseries? Comments about Benoit and wrestling stuff?
I just know I gotta watch it, like 100%.
Yeah.
That shit was dark.
For sure.
I need to know more.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious about the Eddie Guerrero thing now, just because like he seemed like such an impactful. Well, clearly, like he had a huge impact on Chris Benoit, so that would be interesting.
Yeah.
But also, like, the whole show, Dark Side of the Ring, it's just it seems very interesting and yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely
More to
do
watch.
the Owen Hart one, which I think is a two-parter as well. That one's there's some that I watch and they're good to watch, but it's probably more of a wrestling.
I mean,
fan,
it's
you'll get
pretty
more out of it
dark,
than not.
so you kind of have to
Yeah.
be in a state of mind that you're like prepared to,
You
really
yourself
kinda-
are okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Because like I was watching with Lydia, and she was just like, "Why is this so dark?" And I'm like, "It's called The Dark Side of the Ring. Like, there's, what are you expecting?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw her head turn to see to look at you. Like, what you say about me?
Yeah. It's funny.
Yeah, they're doing a season 3 as well.
Oh, wow.
I think he brought up some of the topics they
Yeah,
wanted
they announced
to
it. 14
discuss.
episodes.
Yeah. What are some of the
Yeah.
season 3? Last thing.
Because that's like a Vice Canada. Is it produced by?
Yeah,
Canada
Vice.
Or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They also announced like several offshoots, right? Like Dark Side of
Oh, that would be interesting. So like other sports?
other sports. Yeah.
It's a big hit for them. Like ratings wise, it does great numbers for Vice.
I mean, it is pretty
um,
fascinating.
yeah.
Also, hopefully educational. So.
I think
Yeah.
very much so. Like especially if
Yeah.
it makes you realize like, okay, we really need to make sure that everyone doing these things that are for your entertainment can at least live their life afterwards, because
And learn from
they
it.
have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that there are things, was it like precautions taken, and systems in place to make sure that the people can actually come off
Actually,
the
I do have,
stage and survive.
I do have one last question before we sign off. Thomas, after watching this, did you kind of like have like a retrospect as to like when you looked back on your your interest and passion for wrestling? Did you look back on it and being like, maybe stopping or maybe like not pursuing that was for the best in terms of like health, like mentally or physically?
I think as I think about the Benoit tragedy enough, or like I've always thought about it in my mind, and the stuff that was in the documentary I mostly already knew. I don't think anything was actually brand new other than kind of the David Benoit stuff.
Right.
And maybe some of the CTE stuff. I think I knew everything already. So not totally. It was weird. When I left wrestling, I planned to go back eventually, but then I kind of got, finished the school, got a job, like became kind of an adult, right? And then looking back, I'm like, I'm very happy I didn't go back. I didn't go back and
I was thinking more in the terms of like the CTE thing. Yeah, because like that seemed like that's a pretty serious,
Yeah. Like I think it kind of adds up to the things of like, okay, doing this, like, it's funny. I never really loved wrestling all that much when I was doing it. I liked the promos, the character stuff, planning the interviews, planning the entrance, doing all that stuff.
So
I
the
like
storytelling part of it.
Yeah, I think if managers were more prominent, I think I would, like, if this was the 80s and managers were still like a thing.
Huge.
I might have kind of done that or kind of gone more because I'm also like, I maxed out my athletic potential. Like I could throw a good drop kick. I could throw a good, I could do the basic moves fine enough. Like nowadays it's like double backflip, cartwheel, suplex, corkscrew things, and that's like minimal. You got to do that. So it's like even physically, of like I would have been able to be. Looking back, I could have. I really wouldn't unless I did. Like again, I'm also physically I'm not be able to put on a bunch of muscle naturally as well. Mm-hmm. So the potential that I would have to actually make any decent money in it, I would have to give it my all, and that would sacrifice everything else kind of for it if I wanted to, right? Yeah, I wouldn't be able to kind of just go half in it because I'd have to kind of devote everything to it. And I think over time I was kind of just like, it's not worth it, at some point. And again, with all that was the CTE stuff as well. It's like also that doesn't also with that.
What I'm really trying to say is we're glad you're here with us today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Exactly. Yeah. No, like like looking back on the people that were part of my wrestling class, half of them left kind of around the time that we all became wrestlers, and we're like, not for me, kind of a thing.
Right.
Like we did it, and then it's still like,
right. Fun while it lasted.
Then, Yeah, and then a couple still wrestled. One guy retired, but like wrestled for a bit longer. The Voros twins, who were like
Right.
TikTok celebrities, and they're probably gonna they've done
That's awesome.
WWE tryouts. They're probably gonna be like. Actually, Chris Jericho is actually like follows him on Twitter and actually has Voros Twins merch, and he'll post like he'll wear Voros Twins t-shirts. Chris Jericho
wow.
will
That's wicked.
sometimes and like on Instagram and stuff.
Well,
yeah.
shit.
Yeah, they're big. So they're gonna be big stars one day. So it's kind of cool being in their first matches ever and stuff and saying that.
Yeah.
But I know that they've gotten concussions themselves. So, anyways.
Right.
Yeah. But it's a thing where like it's
Inevitable.
Yeah. So. Yeah. There you go.
Cool.
Cool boys.
Thanks for bringing us through this, man.
Yeah, it was cool.
That was really interesting.
It was fun to do it's good to do the kind of the research well, not fun, but definitely interesting, and I learned some things about it all that I didn't know before as well, right? So that was cool. Thanks guys for listening to this episode of the Swamp Life podcast. Check us back next week where we're talking some more fun stuff. Peace easy.